Good morning, everyone. Wait for my fellow board colleagues to join me here. Good morning. Today is Wednesday, March 17th. It is 9:30 a.m. and I would like to call this workshop to order. My name is Joaquin Esquivel and I'm chair of the State Water Board. Forgot to add that part. Good to see you all this morning. I'm joined today by my fellow board colleagues, Vice Chair Doreen Diadamo, Board Member Tam Dodak, Board Member Sean McGuire, and Board Member Laurel Firestone. We're joined as well, actually, by our Executive Director, Eileen Sobek, our Chief Counsel, Michael Loffer, our two Chief Deputies, Eric Oppenheimer and Jonathan Bishop, and our Clerk of the Board is Janine Townsend, and assisting her today is Courtney Tyler. As you can see, this meeting is being webcast and recorded. So, and in order to comply with the governor's executive orders for physical distancing and due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we don't have a physical meeting room. Instead, we're here on this platform as we have been for this last year. You are either viewing us through two ways, our customary webcast on YouTube or on the Cal EPA channel. If you intend to comment on today's workshop item, you should be here on the Zoom platform with us. There are instructions at the top of today's agenda on how to do so. If you are having trouble with that, please do just email comment letters at waterboards.ca.gov, and our clerk of the board will help you get onto the platform here with us. Until it is your turn to speak, your camera will be turned off and you will be muted. And once it's your turn to provide comment, you will be invited to do so. With that out of the way, I don't believe we have public forum this morning, and instead we can get straight into our workshop item, which is, again, we're continuing yesterday's board meeting, and so today is actually item number 8, which is the State Water Board's public workshop on the 2020 Safe Drinking Water Plan. And we have here today with us the Division of Drinking Water, and welcome them to begin presentation. Good morning again, everyone.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you for joining us today for this workshop on the Safe Drinking Water Plan. If you thought you were logged into the Mesa College Algebra 101 class, well, you're on the wrong call. My name is Randy Barnard. I'm the Chief of Division of Drinking Water's Technical Operations Section. The Safe Drinking Water Plan is a unique opportunity. As you'll hear, the impetus for the Safe Drinking Water Plan is established in statute by the state legislature. I say it's a unique opportunity for a couple of reasons. First, the promise of the Safe Drinking Water Act has not been fully met in California. The vast majority of us are fortunate to have safe and reliable drinking water at all times, provided by capable public water systems. Still, too many communities have serious ongoing drinking water problems, including violations of primary drinking water standards for multiple years. The problem is well documented and actions are underway to correct it. But what else can we do, collectively speaking, to meet the promise of the Safe Drinking Water Act? That's where this plan comes in. The second reason why I say this is a unique opportunity is that the legislature has directed us in statute to provide a set of recommendations to improve drinking water quality. These include recommending legislative actions, program actions by the State Water Board, and actions required for public water systems. Now, this is the third version of the Safe Drinking Water Plan. There was the original 1993 version, there was a 2015 version, and now this 2020 version. We are right now in the public comment period for this current plan. Next slide, please. The purpose of this workshop is to provide background on our current plan, review what we've done since the last plan, give you an overview of our new proposed plan, and then invite you, the public, to comment on what we're recommending. You can do this in writing by sending us an email, or if you just want to say it, you can do it at the end of our presentation. Now, as the board chair just said, if you have not already done so and would like to make a verbal public comment, you will need to be signed into the Zoom meeting. Just request a password following the instructions included on the notice of this public workshop. And we'll be showing you a link later on too, if you need that. Next slide, please. With me here today, I have two of our staff who have been leading the development of the plan, Mark Bartson and Ashley Doomer. Mark was involved with the preparation of previous versions of the plan, both in the early 1990s and in 2015. And he was the lead on the early discussions and drafting of this current plan. Ashley has led finalizing the plan and will be doing the review of all public comments. She will also be preparing the staff report that's going to be going to the State Water Board later this summer. Next slide, please. So what we're going to talk to you about today is an introduction, which I just did. We'll go over the schedule, and then Mark will walk you through some history. Ashley will then explain the new draft plan to you. After that, I'm sure we'll all be ready for a quick break, which we'll take, and then we'll come back to hear comments and answer any questions. Next slide, please. So here's our current schedule. The milestones are public comment closes on April 23rd. We'll be considering all comments received as we finalize the plan, and then we'll provide those to the state board members. We have a target date of August 3rd for a presentation to the State Water Board at their board meeting. And then in August, we plan to submit the final report to legislature. Next slide, please. So what's the purpose of the state water, the Safe Drinking Water Plan? Well, broadly speaking, it assesses California's drinking water quality, and it looks at specific problems and health risks to the public. And most importantly, it gives us an opportunity to make our best case for specific recommendations to improve drinking water quality. Next slide, please. Now, more specifically, the purpose of the plan can be summed up by the following quotes that I've taken from the plan itself. Since the establishment of the Federal Safe Drinking Water Act in 1974, there have been major improvements to the quality of drinking water for the vast majority of communities served by public water systems. However, for many communities, the promise of safe drinking water has not been met. In many cases, safe drinking water has not been available for many years for these communities. This report provides a timely and unique opportunity to chart the overall course towards providing safe drinking water to all communities in California, end quote. Now, with that, I'd like to hand this presentation over to Mark, who will be walking you through some of the history.
Thank you, Randy. Can you all hear me well? Good. Thank you for this opportunity today to present to you on the Safe Drinking Water Plan. As Randy mentioned, this is a very unique opportunity. I have been fortunate enough in my career at the Water Board, both at the Water Board and at the California Department of Public Health, to have been involved in the implementation and development of previous versions of the plan, and then also most recently in the last couple of years to have been the lead for a large portion of the development of this plan. Now, of course, this plan was developed with input from our management staff, our field staff, our district engineers, from discussions we've had with stakeholders and public water systems. It's our collective plan. A couple of things from the history of the Safe Drinking Water Plan. The first plan was developed in the late 1980s and published in 1993. The second version of the plan was published in 2015, shortly after the drinking water program coming over from the Department of Public Health to the State Water Board. In that plan, we charted a fairly ambitious course, I would say, to get the drinking water program going to where it needs to be. We've made a lot of progress. As Randy mentioned, there's a long ways to go. In 2019, with the passage of Assembly Bill 2501, additional topics were added to the plan. We'll talk about those in a little bit of detail. Last month, we released the draft plan for public comment, as Randy mentioned, and we have about another month or so to go before public comment period closes. And more to come in the future. The plan is mandated to be published, prepared and published every 5 years. So in fact, we're already thinking about the next version of the plan. It's always a work in progress. Next slide, please. First, a brief overview of the plan contents pursuant to statute. There's 12 specific topics specified in statute, including the 2 new topics, which are administrators and consolidation. As Randy mentioned, it is to include recommendations for action by the legislature, the State Water Board, and public water systems. And it addresses public water systems serving fewer than 10,000 service connections. Next slide. So what are public water systems? Wanted to give you a brief recap of that. There's really 3 categories: the community water systems, which serve residential areas such as cities, towns, and mobile home parks, where most of us live. There's a non-transient, non-community water systems, which serve the same people daily, non-residential, at least 6 months per year, such as schools and businesses where 25 or more employees. These are a special category of public water systems where the same group of people are exposed to the water on a regular basis. And then finally, there's a transient non-community water systems that serve a varying population in non-residential settings for a minimum of 60 days per year. This includes restaurants and campgrounds with their own water system. Next slide. I wanted to run you through some of the statistics that we have in the plan, but just to kind of frame the issue a little bit on the large number of public water systems. Community water systems, we have 2,884. The non-transient non-communities, right about 1,500. And the transient non-communities, just about 3,000, for a total of 7,400, more or less. Next slide. Let's take a look at what the statutory mandate includes for the contents of the plan. First of all, the overall quality of California's drinking water and specific water quality problems. Second, types and levels of contaminants, along with estimated costs to meet primary standards and public health goals. A discussion and analysis of the known and potential health risks. An evaluation of how to improve existing water quality information systems to be more effectively used to protect drinking water. You'll hear quite a bit about that and read quite a bit about that in the report. The 5th thing is an evaluation of the research for screening and detection of waterborne chemicals. 6 is an analysis of the technical and economic viability and the health benefits of various treatment techniques. Next slide. 7 is alternatives for financing, construction, installation, and operation of new treatment technologies. There's a large focus on treatment in the report. 8, sources of revenue available to public water systems. 9, the current cost of drinking water paid by residential, business, and industrial consumers. There's discussion in the plan, and of course, there's a lot of work going on this topic, on the topic of affordability and cost outside of the plan. 10 is recommendations to improve the quality of drinking water, along with a 5-year implementation plan. And finally, 11 and 12, the new topics, the review of the use of administrators to achieve access to safe drinking water. 12, review of consolidations used to achieve access to safe drinking water. More on those in a moment. Next slide. These new plan elements, consolidation and administrators, are a focus under the Safe and Affordable Financing for Equity and Resiliency program, known as the SAFER program. Specifically, they ask us to look at the number of communities that achieve access to safe drinking water through consolidation and administrators. How has this impacted rate structures and affordability, the costs and duties of the administrator, whether the administrator program or the consolidation program should be modified. These are works in progress. They're covered in this plan, and they'll be covered in more detail in future plans and ongoing reporting under the SAFER program. We have an extensive amount of information on these 2 topics on our consolidation and partnership website. The link is found here. Next slide. Some of the information on consolidations that is posted on that site is noted here. I do want to mention about consolidations that this is a focus of the SAFER program, but it's also woven in how we conduct business these days and the overall compliance of public water systems and carrying out the regulatory program. Consolidations are fundamental. This page includes, the web page includes information on the administrator program to date and consolidation statistics, along with success stories, incentives. It's a very detailed program with a lot of information available. Next slide. Specifically administrators, again, new authority we have under the Health and Safety Code. As of September 2018, the Water Board has authority to order the appointment of an administrator to a public water system after it makes findings that are required and completes the required public notification process. Next slide. I think we're all aware that a lot has gone on since 2014 with the consolidation of the drinking water program under the State Water Board, specifically since the 2015 plan. Here's a list of some of the milestones. I'll touch upon them, a few of them briefly. The human right to water is foundational to everything we do in the Water Board. There was a resolution adopted in 2016 that brought that into focus under everything that the State Water Board does. In 2017, the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act reached it's one of its first milestones with the establishment of medium and high priority groundwater sustainability agencies. We had the adoption of the MCL for 123 TCP, the establishment of mandatory consolidation authority, and quite a few others that are mentioned here. Next slide. A couple that I wanted to focus on in detail are the SAFER program in 2019 and the Water Resiliency Portfolio Initiative under the Governor's executive order. The Safe and Affordable Funding for Equity and Resilience program is a set of tools, funding sources, and regulatory authorities designed to meet the goals of safe and accessible and affordable drinking water for all Californians, beyond just public water systems. The Water Resilience Portfolio addresses California water challenges, which are quite daunting. And the Governor's statement in establishing the executive order for this, he stated that to meet these challenges, we need to harness the best in science, engineering, and innovation to prepare for what's ahead. We need an all of the above approach to get there. Next slide. Just a brief recap of the SAFER program, which is discussed in a fair amount of detail in the plan, and of course has full documentation available and a high level of transparency and ongoing milestones. The purpose, again, is for safe drinking water in every California community for every Californian. The SAFER program has adopted its initial funding expenditure plan and policy. A focus is identifying at-risk public water systems, state small systems, and domestic wells. So here it goes beyond public water systems. And again, the website for the SAFER program with full information. Next slide. A little bit more on the water resilience portfolio. In April 2019, Governor Newsom, by executive order, directed the establishment of a water resilience portfolio. Next slide. Some of the challenges that were identified and are addressed broadly by the water resilience portfolio include unsafe drinking water at the top of the list, with major flood risks, severely depleted groundwater aquifers, uncertain water supplies, and native fish populations. So this covers not just drinking water, but the whole drinking water universe within California. Next slide. In July of 2020, the Water Resiliency Portfolio was adopted. To develop the portfolio, state agencies conducted an inventory and assessment of key aspects of California water, solicited input from tribes, agency, individuals, and groups and leaders across the state. The priorities included implementing the Safe and Affordable Drinking Water Act of 2019 at the top of the list. It also included supporting local communities to successfully implement Sustainable Groundwater Management Act under SGMA. And it included a host of other priorities, many of them directly and indirectly related to drinking water. It's all tied together. Next slide. I'll shift here to a brief recap of the 2015 plan recommendations before we turn our focus onto the current plan. The 2015 plan recommendations were organized under 6 areas. If you recall, at that time, we were in a drought, and we had that at the top of our list of priorities. Affordable, safe drinking water for disadvantaged communities, shared solutions such as consolidations and administrators, program funding, program action, transparency and information management, treatment and analytical methods, and emergency preparedness and response. You'll see these themes, some of these themes repeating, of course, they're ongoing issues. Next slide. Want to touch upon a couple of the specific recommendations from that plan. One of them related to the affordable, safe drinking water for disadvantaged communities. The recommendation was that funding should be provided for infrastructure improvement to public water systems, particularly small water systems serving disadvantaged communities that are not meeting safe drinking water quality requirements. Sufficient funding for administration should be included. This, of course, is a work in progress with ongoing under the SAFER program. Happy to report that. Next slide. Shared solutions, consolidations, partnerships. Again, one of the recommendations was the state board will continue to promote consolidation of small water systems wherever feasible and appropriate. Consolidation is not limited to full or physical consolidation of drinking water treatment and delivery systems. It may include technical, managerial, financial, or physical arrangement between water systems. Overall, the status is we've made significant progress with a lot of work ahead. Next slide. Under treatment and analytical methods, one of the recommendations was the State Water Board recommended enactment of legislation to allow expanded use of point of use and point of entry treatment by public water systems. The legislation is in place, of course, and the regulations have been adopted. This legislation, the regulations now allow for limited time period, the permitting of point of use and point of entry treatment for small systems serving less than 200 service connections, including schools and businesses. Next slide. Emergency preparedness and response. This is a major focus of the new plan, but I wanted to revisit a fairly short recommendation in our previous plan. As part of the sanitary surveys, the State Water Board will encourage all public water systems to update their emergency response plan at least every 5 years. So we were relying on a voluntary program of encouragement. We've made progress on that, but there's more work ahead. We feel this needs more attention as discussed in the plan. Next slide. Infrastructure condition. This continues to be a focus. The recommendation in 2015 was that the State Water Board would continue to encourage community water systems to adopt an asset management plan for infrastructure replacement as part of their rate settings process. So again, a voluntary plan of encouragement. Some progress has been made, more attention is needed. This is discussed in detail in the current report plan. Next slide. Finally, as we bring our focus to the 2020 Safe Drinking Water Plan, I want to reiterate that again, the focus of the plan is the recommendations, the quality, the thoroughness, and completeness of the recommendations. Are we taking advantage of this timely opportunity? What can our water future look like? The water resiliency portfolio has at the very top of the list for the future, all Californians to have access to safe and clean drinking water. That is our focus. I now pass the presentation here on to Ashley Doomer, who will present on the 2020 Safe Drinking Water Plan, bring our focus to that. Ashley?
Thanks, Mark. As Randy mentioned earlier, I am responsible for getting this plan completed. But unlike Mark, this is my first opportunity to get to work on the Safe Drinking Water Plan. So today I'm going to be covering what's in the 2020 Safe Drinking Water Plan. I'm going to provide a brief overview of the 12 chapters, Assuming that you haven't got an opportunity to read all 225 pages of this report, then I'm going to talk about some of our recommendations, some of the themes that we identified, and I'll wrap it up by reminding you how to provide comments on our draft plan. So to begin, 4 strong themes really emerged from our work, and we use these themes to organize our recommendations. Now, those 4 themes are emergency preparedness, sustainability, equity and the human right to water, and program actions. Now, these themes definitely have quite a bit of overlap over each other. And central to our themes is the reality that clean, safe, and affordable water is essential for healthy communities. Collectively, we work hard to make this a reality, but we recognize that even more work is ahead of us to make this a reality for everyone. Next slide. So Chapter 1 really introduces the plan, provides background information, and describes the purpose of the Safe Drinking Water. It really highlights some of the major legislative changes since our previous plan. Chapter 1, we really try and frame the overall issues. And it's intended that that this doesn't have any specific recommendations. This chapters 2 through 11 do actually have all the recommendations. This is really just a broad introduction into our plan. Next slide. So chapter 2, we start to dive into more details, and we provide insight into the roles and responsibilities, the resources and agencies, and all the different parties involved in the overall effort to support safe drinking water envisioned under the Safe Drinking Water Act. We also discuss consolidation and administrator, which are now new tools available to the Division of Drinking Water. We discuss the various organizational structures of public water systems, including ownership types such as public agencies, private ownership, mutual water companies, and it provides examples of these different types. This chapter also provides background on the drinking water regulatory program carried out by the Division of Drinking. Under the Safe Drinking Water Act, the primary responsibility for compliance belongs to each public water system under the authority of their drinking water permit. And it's important that we acknowledge the effort that many of the public water systems take that responsibility very seriously. And it's because of that most of us do have access to water that meets the regulatory standards. But the question is, how do we close the remaining gap for communities that do not have access to safe water? Next slide. Chapter 3 discusses our various sources of water supply. And you may be aware that California depends on a combination of water sources to meet our needs. These sources don't just include groundwater and surface water, but in Chapter 3, we also discuss alternative water supplies such as ocean desalination and recycled water. These sources are at various risks from differing threats. And we go into detail about the possible threats. And some of those threats include the well-known threat of nitrate in drinking water sources, especially in agricultural areas from fertilization application, but also the emerging threat of the perfluorinated compounds such as PFOA and PFOS, which we are currently doing extensive studying on to better understand. Now, this chapter does contain quite a few recommendations, and that's because there's a lot that goes into the quality of California's drinking water. Next slide. So while 98% of customers served by public water systems receive water that does meet the standard, there are still systems that violate these standards. In Chapter 4, we detail the violations that occurred between 2015 and 2019. We assess geographically where the violations are occurring, and we evaluate the impact of public water system size in their ability to comply with the various drinking water standards. A lot of the information is in the same information that we use to put together our annual compliance report, which is prepared by the State Water Board each year. Chapter 5 really dives into the data systems that the Division of Drinking Water staff currently use. It also introduces some of the new data collection systems that we're currently working on, and it addresses specific gaps in our current data, such as not having detailed information on state small water systems. This chapter also details our efforts to make the data more available and transparent to others. Strong data systems are essential to carrying out the mandates of the Safe Drinking Water Act. Timely and accurate, complete information is needed by public water systems, regulatory agencies, and the public for various purposes. The importance of the data systems was discussed in previous editions of the Safe Drinking Water. This is another chapter where we have a ton of recommendations because we recognize that there's a lot of improvement that we still need in this area. Excellent. Chapter 6 explains the various analytical methods used to evaluate the quality of the water. This chapter provides all the federal and state maximum contaminant levels. So if you ever wanted to know the difference between EPA regulations compared to the state water boards, you can just quickly reference this chapter. It also talks about some of the unregulated chemical monitoring that's performed, and it examines important ways of improving existing methods and looking at new methods that are needed to better inform customers of the water quality. So this information is really useful because it helps us figure out ways if we can lower our maximum contaminant levels, and with new methods being developed, we're able to detect new chemicals such as microplastics. Next slide. So in the previous chapters, we discussed some of the possible contaminants that systems may have or have to deal with. In chapter 7, we discussed the various treatment technologies that are available to water systems to remove these contaminants. We also discussed the cost of compliance with 123 TCP, as it's the only maximum contaminant level since the 2015 Safe Drinking. Next slide. So chapter 8, this is a really exciting chapter for us, and it's brand new. And a lot of this was really based on the work from our SAFER unit, and we didn't have them in place until relatively recently. And a huge component of sustainability is a public water system's ability to have adequate technical, managerial, and financial capacity. And this chapter really highlights the need for water partnerships and discusses some of the early lessons that we've learned with consolidation and the use of administrators. I really encourage all of you to read this chapter as it details so many aspects of our program. And this chapter also has a ton of recommendations associated with it, because I think we recognize the need for how important sustainability truly is. Next slide. So chapter 9 evaluates drinking water cost and affordability. So factors such as what type of source the water system used can really vary significantly among water systems and the cost associated with purchasing that source. It also details this system's revenue source and possible impacts to the revenue. Additionally, we talk about the increased focus on the issue of affordability, really consistent with the human right to water and recent legislative authorities from AB 401 and the SAFER program. the State Water Board continues to focus on affordability. Next slide. Chapter 10 really details the various funding programs available, specifically detailing all the various State Water Board funding programs for drinking water systems, and it also discusses various methods of financing available to water systems outside of our funding programs. Water systems need capital improvements, and they need funds to be able to pay for these, whether it's new or upgrading facility to meet regulatory requirements, or replacing aging infrastructure that's beyond its useful lifespan. In addition, capital costs should consider the cost of ongoing operations and maintenance in order for the project to be successful long-term. For example, a water system may secure the funds necessary to install a water treatment facility. However, without the funds to cover the ongoing operations and maintenance, it's really unlikely the facility will continue to be able to provide safe drinking water. Next slide. Chapter 11. Chapter 11 really discusses the threats to drinking water systems and lessons learned from various emergencies and disasters over the last several years. These disasters include unthinkable damage by wildfire, among others. And this chapter really discusses the variety of disasters that have taken place. For example, last year, over 4 million acres of California burned. And we know wildfires aren't the only threat. And it's inevitable with climate change that these disasters and emergencies are going to occur and potentially occur much more frequently. And so water systems need to be able to be prepared for these various emergencies and threats. And so this chapter also has a lot of recommendations, and we think that this is really important given the need of how critical emergency preparedness is. Next slide. Chapter 12 summarizes all of our various recommendations. There's a relatively large number of recommendations. There's a total of 66 in this report, so we're quite ambitious in what we're hoping to get done. And as I mentioned, 4 themes really emerged as we developed not only the recommendations, but the plans. And we organized the recommendations around these themes. Next slide. So as you can see from this graphic, at the center of all the work, the goal is healthy communities. And we recognize that the component of healthy communities is, of course, safe and affordable drinking water. The 4 themes surrounding our healthy communities are emergency preparedness, sustainability, equity and human right to water, and program action. So we worked hard with our graphics unit to come up with this image, and we really like that the pieces of the circle blend together, as this conveys how the themes are interrelated. For example, a public water system without adequate technical, managerial, and financial capacity is not likely able to meet all the statutory and regulatory requirements across the range of operating conditions. They're less likely to be able to return to compliance after a violation has occurred. They're less likely to be able to be prepared and deal and recover from an emergency. And that ultimately means that others need to get involved. So now I'm going to go through each of the themes, kind of highlight at least one recommendation from each. Next slide. So emergency preparedness. Under this theme, we're really focused on the experience of wildfires, droughts, earthquakes, and funding, and how do we increase our preparedness and our resiliency to when these things happen. So the large emergencies and disasters that have happened over the last several years really bring this theme area to the forefront. And like I mentioned earlier, unfortunately, with climate change, these systems need to be even more prepared because they're more likely to experience impacts. And it's really important that we increase the overall level of preparation and resiliency. Slide. All community water systems should be able to participate via membership in a mutual aid organization or with other water utilities. And we really think that this is critical that water systems participate in mutual aid organizations so that when emergency does take place, the system can more quickly address the issue and recover faster. Another recommendation is to develop focused programs to ensure that California water systems are planning and preparing for the impacts of climate change. As we know, California's drinking water systems are at risk from various threats, and it's important to prepare for them. This is even more critical with the impacts of climate change. We provide some specific examples of what systems can do to prepare for emergency, but there's definitely more. Next slide. So moving into our second theme, sustainability. And so for public water systems, the term sustainability really refers to both general concepts and specific elements of our technical, managerial, and financial capacity. Chapter 8 really explores this topic in detail, and key recommendations include increasing emphasis on the opportunity for consolidation, developing asset management plans, ensuring sufficient revenues, and the needs for water systems to further evaluate the adequacy of their source, both quality and quantity. Next slide. So one of the recommendations in sustainability is that the State Water Board will encourage vulnerable water systems, particularly those that rely on a single groundwater source, to study and improve their reliability. Water systems with a single source are at risk. We've seen this from time and time again with the recent public safety power shutoffs to equipment failure to drain. And when a system only has one source, they're at much higher risk of not being able to continuously provide safe drinking water. And these systems should really look for an alternative to help alleviate the risk. Excellent. As discussed in Chapter 8, the technical, managerial, and financial capacity of a water system is an important factor in whether the water system can meet the requirements. Having this information available to the public will increase our transparency and will provide valuable information to the customers of these water systems. Next slide. Oh. Now on to our equity and human right to water theme. So we all work hard to ensure equity and human right to water, and that's evident by a number of the programs that have been established, such as SAFER, which is specifically targeting disadvantaged communities with ongoing water quality violations and problems. And the SAFER program includes robust reporting and transparency to provide a foundation for achieving these recommendations. And within this thematic area, there are recommendations related to several ongoing initiatives to explore and analyze actions related to the issue of affordability. Next slide. So in this recommendation, we'd like to investigate ways to expedite funding for consolidation projects. For water systems that want to consolidate, it's really important that the process be done as quickly as smoothly as possible in order to provide those customers with safe, clean, and affordable drinking water. And we want that to happen as soon as possible. Next slide. Many small water systems have rates that are too low, and some still have flat rates. Each water system should be required to analyze the adequacy of their rate structure and asset management plan. For small systems, technical assistance can be provided to assist with this work. And in order to maintain water systems, they need their rate structures to be set up that they're able to cover their expenses. Too often we see water systems deferring needed water system improvements and end up having to pay more costly repair costs for when they have emergencies down the road. Therefore, it's important that water systems fully understand their expenses and evaluate their rate structures to cover their expenses. Next slide. So the fourth theme is program action. And this really refers to the element that this work cannot be done alone. And this is really about collaboration with other state and federal agencies, public water systems, stakeholders, interested parties, and the public. And so these recommendations are really founded on not only the state water board can do, but also how we can collaborate with others to meet the promise of safe drinking water for all communities. Next slide. So this recommendation really highlights the coordination needed between local, county, city planning departments, LAFCO, local environmental health jurisdictions, in order to coordinate certain elements of the SAFER program. It's really important that we're able to coordinate with these various agencies when a new system is being permitted in particular. And improved coordination and information sharing will improve the outcomes and reduce the formation of non-viable public water systems in the future. Next slide. So moving on, done talking about the 2020 Safe Drinking Water Plan, and wanted to kind of highlight that we are currently in our public workshop phase, and we will be accepting public comments through April 23rd. And I really hope in giving you an overview of the various chapters and some of the recommendations that you'll take a look at the plan and provide us valuable feedback. Next slide. So if you are interested in continuing to follow the progress of the Safe Drinking Water Plan, you can visit the State Water Board's website on the Safe Drinking Water Plan page. And again, for those who are interested in providing written comments, there are 4 methods to go about submitting those comments: email, fax, mail, or hand deliver. So no matter what options you're interested in, there's quite a few opportunities for you to do so. Excellent. And for those of you that wish to provide an oral comment today, as both Joaquin and Randy mentioned, you need to be signed into the Zoom meeting. So please request a password, and information on how to do that was included in the notice for the public workshop. And next slide. So with that, I think we're ready to take a short break. We'll get all set up to start taking public comments. I guess we'll do an 11-minute break and come back at 10.
Thank you, Ms. Dewar. I think that makes sense. Let's take an 11-minute break. I know currently we have two individuals, I think, on queue to speak. So anyone viewing the webcast that's looking to comment publicly now, please, feel welcome to again come onto the platform here. There's instructions both on the top of today's agenda and on the website, and/or you can email comment letters at waterboards.ca.gov. But do also know this isn't your only opportunity to comment. 250 some odd pages is a lot to digest. And thank you, Ms. Doomer, for really summarizing well for us here what is a good overview of a lot of incredible work in there. I myself was digesting it yesterday and continuing to digest it now, and just really appreciate all the information there. So let's take the break. And as you suggested, let's go ahead and come back here at 10:30 and prepare to have some further discussion, I'm sure, here amongst board members and then also any members of the public. So thank you. We'll be back here in 10 minutes. I squeezed every moment out of the countdown clock I could. Good to have everyone back. Thank you. First, board colleagues, any general comments? You know, I just want to say again, just really appreciate the great work that's gone on into this document. To my mind, you know, it calls to other large, you know, effort documents that are out there, like the general water plan that the Department of Water Resources puts together. They're similarly directed by the legislature, and a, you know, really comprehensive approach and compendium to what there is, you know, again, general water planning for the state. And here we're focused on safe drinking water and the implementation of that act. So I, you know, one, really appreciate the Herculean effort that I know that goes into it, and two, you know that then it's trying to meet a number of audiences. I think certainly for us, it's our internal think and has helped, I'm sure, structure how our district engineers and the Division of Drinking Water see the challenge and the issues. Obviously, the legislature, again, has directed certain parts of it here. So it's in response to them and things that they're looking for. And certainly this document is for the general public's consumption and everyone, you know, our stakeholders, including water agencies. So because it's trying to serve so many audiences, I think it is important to remember that different individuals take information different ways. I know right now it's a lot of text, and needs to be so because the actual work is in the words that are there. And I would just say, as we move to finalize the document, I would just recommend that we work with our communications shop, that we work with some of our other folks to help make sure that we're hitting, again, because there are so many audiences that this document, I think, is really intended for, that we're making it a little more accessible because it is a lot of text to get through. And for those, you know, that aren't maybe engineer minded or otherwise used to having digest large blocks of text, it can help to, you know, get some graphic design work is basically, I guess, what I'm saying there. But, you know, so just again, there's a lot of audiences for this document. It is a great compendium and very comprehensive, and appreciate the great work that's gone on from the division in the development of it. And since it's on a 5-year time cycle, would like to think, you know, how do we, because there's so much information in there, you know, how do we make sure we are using it, and it isn't just kind of a, you know, kind of sits there then for the next 5 years until it's updated, but instead, you know, is repurposed in different ways. And I think there again, kind of touching with our communications folks and thinking how different parts of it can be communicated in different ways or at different opportunities in the next 5 years as we move to update and then again, refresh the document. We make it a more of a living document, a living discussion. But just thank you. Any thoughts from fellow board colleagues here?
I guess I'll wait until after public comment.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. We can call up if anyone has anything they'd like to share now, please just interrupt. And then otherwise I will move to call up Gail Dalenhart from Western Growers. Good morning.
There we go. Good morning. How is everybody?
Doing well, doing well.
You look good. Long time no see.
Yes, it's been a while, Gail. It's good to have you join us.
Thank you. I must confess, I'm still getting through the 266 pages of this document. I did do a word search on it.
Good.
And I did appreciate all of your comments because I can totally agree with them. Getting through it and having it be a living document is very encouraging because things change over time, as we know. Our focus, of course, is on the state smalls and the individual wells that are out in the, you know, fields and farmlands. And so to concentrate on that area, we'd appreciate it also that you take into consideration that, you know, you've got other contributing factors. You have septic tanks that are too close to wells. You've got all kinds of other constituents coming down the road. And so as the investigation and the monitoring takes place, I'd like you to be cognizant of that. I think you will, but those are our concerns that happen in the agricultural areas. We also are appreciative that the CV salts is mentioned in this document, and the implementation of that is starting to get underway. So anyway, we would like to work with you and continue to work with you on this living document once I get through the whole thing.
Great, thank you, Gail. And yes, thankfully we do have time. I think we're, as you saw on the schedule, we're looking to go final in August. So we have, you know, some time here to help digest and flag any input that you all see. And I appreciate the continued collaboration. And yes, you know, in CV salts and its implementation, very front of mind, I think, for us, certainly as we implement the SAFER program, how, you know, as we work in communities that have these overlapping programs and efforts, you know, how do we ensure that we're maximizing the real opportunity here to do more with what are always a limited and under-resourced endeavor on the provision of clean and safe drinking water. And so thank you. I really do appreciate your comments.
Yeah, I did appreciate the consolidation part of the presentation, and I really appreciated how they got through this presentation amazingly, very well and concise. It was very well done. And but I do like the consolidation piece that you're going to focus on. I think that's critically important, and it's critically important to get the right people managing the system. A lot of these little systems that people don't know how to manage them. And so I really appreciate that piece as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I think there for us, it's about communities imagining what their future is. And it is a robust and more resilient one when you have systems connected amongst themselves in a regional way that you know, doesn't allow for folks to fall through the cracks in communities, which, you know, we know has happened for too long. So I think it's about helping the communities see themselves commonly that way, and seeing regionalization and consolidation as something they can drive to you know, better see themselves in the shared resource. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much, Gail. I appreciate it, and look forward to further comment then as you read through the document. Next, I think we have Andrea Ventura from Clean Water Action. Or I apologize. I'll actually look at my my scroll here, but I think it was Michael Claiborne.
That's
but I already
fine.
said Andrea. So amongst you two, you can fight it out. Just kidding.
Go ahead, Andrea.
All
Sorry,
right,
Michael.
thank you, Michael, and I'll try to be brief. So first of all,
No need to be. We have time. So thank you. Good morning, Andrea.
good morning, everyone. Good to see all of you. I hope you're all well. Happy St. Patrick's Day for those of you who may be celebrating. I want to thank everyone. I too have not delved through this entire document, and Clean Water Action, as I think many of you know, our work touches on many aspects of this plan. So you may expect more comment later. I'm going to make just some comments on the drinking water quality part of it and contamination, because that is where I spend most of my time. And, you know, I want to start saying, while I'm going to be a little critical here, I want to start saying that I know that, you know, everyone at the Water Board is coming to work or working remotely through difficult times, doing really great work. And I'm glad to see this plan. And I'm glad to see the hard work that's going on. But one of the things that I'm very concerned with in terms of the contaminant aspect of and water quality aspect of our drinking water program is how slow it is. This is partly, of course, due to the fact that we have a robust scientific basis for doing things and regulating contaminants in water. We don't want to question the need for that. But I'm hoping that I'm going to see something in this report that's going to show us how the Division of Drinking Water is looking at balancing that need for robust and verifiable science with more efficiency. Just to give you an example on hexchrome, I mean, the hexchrome MCL was ordered in May of 2017 to be remanded. Okay, we're going on 4 years now, and the problem there was the economic analysis. So we need to address this reality because as a result, people are drinking contaminated water. We need to move the process. I also, and this is not going to be a surprise to the board members, I want to speak to the PFAS issue. I'm glad to see that being called out as an issue. We certainly appreciate the monitoring that's going on in relation to PFAS, both in drinking water and the potential sites from which it originates. But frankly, we are so far behind other states in what's happening, and that's unusual for California. Other states have moved to regulations of handfuls of these chemicals. And we are still, studying the problem and relying on a chemical by chemical approach where we're focused on 2 chemicals that have been largely phased out of industrial use. So they're still out there. They still need to be addressed. They're forever chemicals, but we're really not moving in that approach. And, if you think about it, my experience with drinking water standards, MCLs, is that these 2 chemicals could take us a decade to regulate. So, at the same time, scientists around the world are making the case for a broader class approach, and they are pointing at ways to think about how to do that. And yet we're not hearing what's going on behind the scenes. Where is AWIHA in looking at this? We know that they've been tasked with trying to figure out how we can regulate these chemicals, if not as an entire class, certainly in broader groups, but we're not hearing what's going on. Despite numerous requests, we are not even discussing alternative regulatory methods. For instance, and this is just an example or a potential example, we're not even discussing, could we set a treatment technique regulation that gives us at least some basic protections from PFAS as a class while we work on specific MCLs. We can't get that conversation started. So just to conclude, I hope to see more in this report about how we're going to be able to keep our science-based approach, but kind of move through our processes faster and with more efficiency. It's a hard thing to do. I'm not making light of that challenge. We're happy to be in those conversations and offer suggestions. We'd like to see more transparency on what's happening behind the scenes on PFAS. We see the notification and response levels, but how are we moving forward in a broader approach and catching up with the rest of the country? And remember that these are not, PFAS, they were referred to as an emerging problem. We are beyond the fact that these are emerging contaminants. They are a crisis. And if we treat them with a broader approach, that's not only going to protect public health, but it's going to allow water systems to make the best treatment decisions. It's going to allow water systems in the states to hold chemical industries accountable. It's going to, help us both financially, technologically, and in terms of health. So that's all I want to say today. Again, thank you for the work. We will continue to be part of this, but we are trying to challenge you to optimize the talent and the abilities we have in this state, and frankly, to do more. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ventura. I appreciate the criticisms and keep continuing to drive us to continue to do better and try to do better with, again, sometimes not an over-resourced endeavor. Yesterday, actually, we did cover priorities on for the Division of Drinking Water for this coming year. Top of it was Chrome 6 and hexavalent chromium and bringing it back here by the end of the year. So do know that is, we know that our work has been a little delayed there, candidly, and that, we are looking to make sure that we bring back protections that were afforded there for a moment. But again, because of issues around the economic feasibility that was done for the previous maximum contaminant limit, the protections are no longer there. So appreciate your comments and continued engagement, and again for pushing us to do more. And would kind of refer back, because we did have some conversation about class just yesterday, actually, before the board, as we talked about our priorities, including PFAS. And not much, I will say, when you review back the discussion, it's not as if we have an extensive solution around how we might characterize this class, but we did talk about some of the requests that we are making for notification and response levels to the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment around these, at least what we're finding. If we're finding it in the environment, we're asking OEHA to develop a notification or response level. The benefit of getting some of those smaller chains, currently, the one we just completed or are looking to complete, PFBS, is that, yeah, to your point, it can maybe get to some of this treatment, kind of treating it, looking at treatment train or treatment technology as kind of a way of getting at what we know are, and perhaps, and this is where the science, I think we're still, at least I'm still looking to see its definitiveness, but does that capture other PFAS constituents there that, are by, again, through treatment alone and by looking at these smaller chains, are you essentially capturing the benefit of getting other PFAS constituents in there? And, whether it's granular activated carbon or some of the other treatment trains that are coming out that are looking like it could be potentially getting some of the PFAS, particularly the larger chains, perhaps that's the case. But anyway, appreciate the comments and continuing to drive us on these issues. And again, I think there's ways we're looking to see how we might be able to treat this class, but I think there's a lot of scientific uncertainty still around it, and trying to at least pursue the PFAS work, at least letting the contaminants that we know are out there through the water quality sampling that we're doing kind of guide us for what we're at least requesting to OEHA. But share the concern that given the thousands of class of PFAS out there, that can lead us to a very lengthy process ultimately. So anyway, thank you again, Ms. Ventura, and appreciate the comments.
Can I just add?
Oh, please. Yeah, I added plenty already. So
yeah, no,
please do. Please add more.
Well, I think we all really share the our impatience with how long things take, and the both in terms of the regulatory process and how much time that takes, and there's good reasons for all of the steps, but it doesn't change the fact that it takes longer than any of us would like, and that there's a sense of urgency that's very real. So appreciate that, and I think we would all agree with that. I really am interested in the that kind of treatment technology approach, just to learn more. So maybe that's something with staff I can follow up on, but would love to just explore how, are there some alternatives to being able to, balance the fact that this will, we're going to constantly be working through these new chemicals, uncertainty, and in this whole class, and there is not clarity on what those levels should be and all the different chemicals that it should be. And we also, and also that kind of piecemealing makes it hard for both consumers, but also the systems and the investments that they're doing. And so just to the extent that there is some kind of way of balancing that as in terms of alternative approaches to regulation, I'd be curious in learning more. And I don't know.
Mr. Plamis.
Yeah, if you want to answer that now, Darren, or as follow-up sometime.
I can answer it somewhat. So it's definitely on our radar as a potential. It's kind of complementary to where we wouldn't have to then declare an MCL for classes, but we could declare a treatment technique, as Ms. Ventura mentioned. It's just not anywhere close yet to us understanding all the treatment ramifications of PFAS. We're monitoring that super heavy to try to see where that's at, but it is a ways out. It sounds great. I hope we get there, and we will keep working hard on it, but there's going to need to be some more research and more understanding of what the capabilities of the different treatment are, and kind of what you then sacrifice with the different types of treatment. So more to come, I'm sure, on that, but it's not that we're withholding something from you for sure on it, because we would be anxious to do it. It's just, we're all impatient for that to possibly be a way. And I think it's getting more
And then just lastly, I really appreciate the, and I feel like I should have mentioned this yesterday on the priorities discussion, which was great. And I know Ms. Ventura was frustrated to not be able, like had wanted to be there, but wasn't able to. But that I do think it'd be great to invite OEHA to be part of those, because they're so interrelated with us and the whole process. So just in the future, it'd be great to, invite them to join us for that and be able to give more a sense of the timing that they have, given the very much intertwined roles we have within that process.
Yeah, good suggestion, board member. And I think OEHA did join us at the last PFAS update,
Yes.
but I think it's good to continue to have them here with us so they can help explain kind of where we are in a very transparent and public way. So,
Right, and not just PFAS, I think, but for
Right.
all the regulatory processes, because they're involved with all of them.
Yeah, and thank you for your comments about the time it takes. I would also note that there was a time when EPA, federal EPA, set many of these MCLs, did the heavy lifting and work for the states, and over the last 20 years or so, that's really shifted and stopped, and meant that really critical issues like responding to PFAS has shifted to the states, and there is where we are at least fortunate for incredible leadership in other states and a lot of sharing that's going on between us all as we try to, very much address what is incredibly challenging. And glad to see, renewed federal interest, and would even acknowledge just today's hearing at the Environment and Public Works Committee, where Senator Padilla and others, Senator Duckworth, led really a discussion around access to clean water, around infrastructure, and many of the challenges that we've just been highlighting here today. Helping systems respond to the climate crisis in a way that ensures that we continue to provide clean and safe water. And so, thank you, board member. Very, very well received and good comment.
I could also chime in.
Please.
Follow up on Ms. Ventura's comment about transparency. I appreciate your comment earlier, Mr. Chairman, about coordinating with our public affairs folks to ensure that we communicate this plan in a way that is digestible. That word has new meaning for me now. Digestible to the broad audience, for which it is intended. I would also say that perhaps there needs to be some discussion about how to establish and maintain some regular communication with our stakeholders, because these processes take so long. People, would like to know what is going on behind the scene, as Ms. Ventura pointed out. And so I would suggest that that also be part of the conversation. And I would say to Ms. Ventura, if she's still listening, that she had some great suggestions. If she could provide it in her comment letter, as much specifics as possible regarding things that we could look into, steps that we could implement with respect to improving transparency and communication, that would be very helpful.
Fantastic. Thank you. Ms. Ventura, did you want to provide any further comment? No. Okay, great. Thank you. Well, right. Thank you for the great discussion, and I echo your suggestion, Board Member Doak. I think that it is important to remember how when are these opportunities for just general touch point, and certainly there are opportunities here at the board, but there should just be on a staff level a little more of a rolling engagement. Okay, next then we can go to Mr. Michael Claiborne with Leadership Council. And thank you for your patience.
Oh, absolutely. And actually, if Andrea wants to take my comments, I'm totally willing to cede my time. I cut off the first part that I was planning to say because Andrea covered it better than I could. I will echo her comments on PFAS and hexavalent chromium in particular. We're encouraged that the board continues to prioritize hexavalent chromium, and it needs to be a top priority to get that standard set this year. Places like Tuleville really need it in place. So we're glad that remains a priority. On SB 200 implementation, I'd say that, well, I should have started by thanking staff for all the great work on this plan. I'm also in the process of reviewing it. A lot of work clearly went into it, and appreciate that even though we're pulling staff, I think in a lot of directions, so much good work is going on. In terms of SB 200 implementation, there have been obviously really important steps that have taken place to begin to implement that legislation and get that funding out the door, especially in the last year with the policy adopted, the expenditure plan, first expenditure plan adopted. There's still a lot of work to do, which I know staff and the board readily acknowledges, to provide solutions to systems that in particular have high unaffordable rates because of a water quality problem. So that should be a focus this year and in the coming years. I know we need to better understand that problem and what the solution set is. Looking forward to working with staff on that. In terms of consolidations, mentioned, discussed in the document, which we appreciate, there's such an important piece to this puzzle in terms of delivering safe drinking water to communities. And they need to, as I think was a theme of Andrea's comments, move much faster. There is reference in the document to an estimated timeline for consolidations of 4 to 10 years. We acknowledge that these are going to take time, but I don't think that we should be accepting a 10-year consolidation timeline under any circumstances, regardless of the complexity. I will say anything less than 3 years, I think would be kind of a miracle in most consolidations that have any kind of complexity, but we should be shooting for 3 to 4 years for these consolidations, or we're not going to meet our goals that were set in the expenditure plan last year. A couple more things on consolidation and to speed things up. First, with respect to mandatory consolidations and SB 88, of course, we should try voluntary consolidation talks first. But once it becomes clear that voluntary talks are not moving forward or not moving forward quickly enough, the board must be willing to use its authority to mandate consolidation to solve drinking water quality violations and deliver safe drinking water to impacted communities. This is particularly true where the subsumed system and the residents served by it are in favor of the consolidation. We just can't let talks draw out forever. And a lot of times the receiving water system has an interest in delay more than solution. I'd also note that current law also specifically allows mandatory consolidation if there's a secondary contaminant violation. I know staff are trying to work out some issues about that, but I think it needs to be a priority. The law specifically says secondary violations, and we need to figure out a way to implement that portion of it. And then finally, the board really needs to start looking at consolidations for at-risk water systems. We are sponsoring legislation, SB 403, authored by Senator Lena Gonzalez, to expand the board's tools to facilitate consolidation of at-risk water systems. And the board has done a lot of good work, and staff have done a lot of good work over the last 2 years with the needs assessment and better understanding this problem. We need to put that data to good use. Turning to drinking water source protection, one thing that I'm not seeing in the document, and again, I'm not totally through it, so I might have missed it, is discussion of the dairy order and really the failure of the current dairy order to protect drinking water sources. The summary representative monitoring report was out in 2018, almost 2 years ago. It concludes that all dairies or most dairies in the state are polluting groundwater right now.
I think I need to interrupt Mr. Laufer. Isn't this being petitioned before us?
Yeah, there's a pending petition, and we'll consider whether or not Mr. Claiborne's arguments here require a disclosure under Water Code Section 13287. But the board is working on that petition, and I think, Mr. Claiborne, partially what you're seeing is that the Division of Drinking Water's work here ultimately will be informed, of course, by what plays out in the Division of Water Quality and the Office of Chief Counsel, and ultimately the board's work on that petition, which hopefully we'll be seeing shortly. Sorry, Michael, you should be asked to unmute again.
All right, I am unmuted again, and thanks for jumping in there. Appreciate that, board member and Mr. Luffer. So that's the dairy order. Also on CV salts, as Gail mentioned, in front of that beautiful picture of an orange orchard. That's beginning to be implemented now. We have early action plans drafts out to the regional board. I will say public process around those early action plans left something to be desired on at least a couple of the plans. Some of the management zones spent a lot of time trying to engage impacted communities, get input. One in particular made no effort, and several, I think, need to improve significantly. But we are looking forward to that early action plans beginning to be implemented in May, and urge the board to stay engaged, make sure that there's good coordination going on between the SAFER program and CV salts implementation. On drought, I'm sure Community Water Center will spend some time there, and anything they say we agree with. On equity, which we are glad that there was a section on, a couple things. One is just acknowledging again that unsafe tap water disproportionately impacts communities of color. SAFER needs to prioritize environmental justice communities in implementation. And then additionally, we continue to believe that the board can do more on community capacity building to ensure that impacted communities can engage in these complex processes for themselves. And I'll end there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you as well, Mr. Claiborne. Really appreciate the comments. Mr. Lawfer.
Oh, I was just going to say, and just for clarity on the record, both for Mr. Claiborne and for the board members, as well as for any members of the public that are watching now, there is nothing that Mr. Claiborne said there that I believe requires a disclosure under Water Code Section 13287. I think it was more just in the context of how the dairy order should be addressed here, or the dairy issue should be addressed here in the Safe Drinking Water Plan, not about the ultimate merits or outcome of the petition pending before the State Water Board.
Thank you, Mr. Lawfer. And on that, since it is a moment of transparency, just can we give a time frame around the dairy order so individuals know when to expect, or is that not communicable here?
I do expect a draft order in the next 1 to 2 months, frankly.
Okay, thank you. I think that's helpful for just everyone. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Claiborne, again for the good comment and points. Next, we have Eric Orellana.
Thank you, Chairman Esquivel. Really appreciate it. My name is Eric Orellana. Good morning, everyone. I'm a policy advocate with Community Water Center. And first and foremost, just wanted to say I really appreciate the work that State Water Board and all the staff has been putting in. This document is very comprehensive, and so we have not gone through all of it, but as much as we can highlight some priorities for us, we appreciate the opportunity. Second, I wanted to just echo and show support for the comments that Andrea Ventura and Mr. Michael Claiborne have voiced, and we are in strong support of many of the priorities that they have highlighted, in particular for chromium-6 and PFAS. We are supportive of the board moving forward as quickly as possible on putting into place a chromium-6 MCL, and we appreciate the work that's been that's being done on that matter. Wanted to highlight also that we are encouraging the state board to have a greater focus on testing for PFAS, and particularly in rural communities. And so we think that there is a great need for PFAS testing to be expanded to include domestic well owners. We think that the scope of the problem has not been adequately assessed, and we think that there is a great opportunity to really get an accurate depiction of the problem by incorporating PFAS testing into ongoing safer efforts to test domestic wells across the state. So we really, as much as we can support that, we echo our support of that. In terms of PFAS, wanted to really highlight a lot of the comments that Andrea said. She's an expert on this, so I can only echo those. Next, I wanted to go in a little bit about drought, and we encourage the State Water Board to put into place a proactive and public communicated drought preparedness plan by this summer, so we can avoid some of the mistakes that were present during the last drought. And I quickly glanced at the document and noticed that there are some timelines in terms of communications, and outreach efforts to ensure that there's adequate responses in place. And we just wanted to highlight that we think that these drought preparedness plans need to be put in place by this summer, because over 90% of the state is currently in drought conditions. And we don't think that we can wait, and certainly community residents cannot wait in the case that their dry wells their wells are going dry. Also, we wanted to give a quick comment in terms of CV salts. We're very concerned about the current status of the implementation of CV salts in the Central Valley, and we request that State Water Board engage in this matter over the next few months. We have been working collaboratively with a number of management zones and other entities in the CV salts program, and we think that there is some room for the State Water Board to engage on the issue. Also, I just wanted to quickly echo the comments that Mr. Michael Claiborne gave on the dairy order. So I'll just leave that at that. But last but not least, I wanted to also make a comment on SAFER program. And we support moving forward with defining an affordability threshold. And also we want to see intentional discussion about how we accelerate projects getting into communities, including related to scaling up the number of community-driven consolidations. And so with that, we would just want to say thank you. And we look forward to continued partnership with the board to secure safe and affordable drinking water for all Californians. And thank you all for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Orellana. Really appreciate the comments and look forward to more detailed comments as you guys dig further into the document, but those were very helpful and really appreciate your time this morning.
Can I follow up with the last?
Yes, please.
So just, again, I think we are all frustrated with how long things take to get solutions in place. And there's real urgency, and especially consolidations. I think both of you mentioned, and Mr. Claiborne in particular just recommended, really the great work that's in the plan on how long things take and realistically for consolidation, and that 10 years for consolidation really isn't acceptable. I think I don't think anyone thinks it should take that long. And so looking at how that breakdown of timeline expectations can be accelerated realistically, there's some things that are going to take longer, but I appreciate the goal of trying to get things done in 3 to 4 years, especially with the consolidations where there's a failing system. So just would encourage, and I know you're already doing this, but would encourage, both Mr. Claiborne and Mr. Orellana to be engaging and helping provide recommendations for how we can really cut that timeline down. Because I agree, we're not going to be able to meet kind of our goals of addressing this crisis, in the next 10 years, if that's how long things are taking. And then also, I guess, so one question with the comments on PFAS testing in rural areas with domestic well owners and I guess maybe state smalls. I'm wondering, Mr. Palamas, if you can just update on, are there, have we yet required testing for nearby private wells where there has been a positive detection in close proximity to domestic wells? Is that step yet happened in terms of, and do we anticipate it happening in terms of seeing orders going out to require that kind of testing?
So gets a little tricky here. Obviously, we have no authority over regulation of private wells. We can't require them to do the testing. And a lot of our testing, well, all of the testing we've ordered to date has been at the expense of the entity under our regulation that we ordered for.
Yeah.
I do know that the military has pursued offering testing for some of their the private wells around some of their facilities. I don't have that data yet. We should hopefully be able to acquire that now that we have the agreement with them to move forward in that respect. Certainly, we've been trying to make available information through our high risk maps that we're going to do through the needs analysis in the SAFER program, and certainly putting it on GeoTracker and others. And I'm sure we could do more to publicize and make private individuals awares so that those that are able to, do begin testing. And then kind of thirdly, as our partners in DWQ and the regional boards continue to pursue the orders they're doing for site cleanup potential at airports, landfills, the other sites that they've now included, those orders as they expand do tend to include then a potential responsible party or the sites that have it to include doing testing at private wells, or at least offering it to folks at their expense. So those are kind of the components that are available to us at the moment, barring some funding source that does come into play that's either specifically or available that we could use to do broad scale public private well testing.
Great, thanks. That's really helpful. And do you know if our at-risk aquifer maps that were developed through Gamma and with the risk the risk assessment needs analysis, do those yet include anything around PFAS, or did we not in this first round?
As I was saying that, I was searching my brain to try to remember whether it did or not. So honestly, I don't recall exactly, but for some reason, I think no, that it'll be added in later. We did include hexchrome as a known future one, but I don't believe we have the PFAS ones. But we put together the infrastructure in place to bring more on as we work through them, for sure.
Great, yeah. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. I think just lastly is, I just heard the two commenters on the drought preparedness plan, and I know this board is so focused on drought and water shortage right now throughout all of our programs and getting prepared for that. And I'm just wondering, there's a lot of really, really good stuff in this plan on that. I'm wondering if there's something in particular that Division of Drinking Water and maybe district engineers or the SAFER program or is doing to just more immediately in the next, as we get into summer, at least supporting drought preparedness plan development with really high risk community areas. Is there anything that we're able to do or looking to do in the next, say, 6 months?
Sorry. So we are planning for drought and trying to bring on resources to address it, and working with the administration to see how we can move forward on that. It's, as with the pending fire responses and all that's gone on, we're pretty much at our limits on ability to stretch into new areas at the moment, unfortunately. So we're working to try to make sure that we do include that. There will be some guidance and other things that hopefully come out when Department of Water Resources CDEG report is out and available to folks. So there's some guidance in there, and we're planning to help try to correlate that with our activities. And of course, we do want to try to bring some of those into just our normal routine stuff when we are working with folks on our sanitarian surveys, but that doesn't touch everybody every year, and that does mean that not everybody would get the benefit of those as we're headed into a drought. So much to do and try to figure out how to prepare in that regard for our drought. I'm not feeling like personally that we're able to cover all of the bases we know we should be covering in that regard.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, and I
thanks.
think you know, there's a response for systems, and then really the domestic well issue as well. And there, I think it is that, thankfully, that continuum of response between us and the Department of Water Resources, where you know they have tools from the last drought as well, so that communities, particularly homeowners of wells, domestic wells, can let the state know, you know, that something's going on. They're going dry. And then, you know, I think on the system side is where, you know, we have that better touch. But to Darren's point, we need to kind of continue to make sure we're resourcing the work, because it's critical, and we can't pretend we can do the work without the resources. So,
And maybe that's something that we can continue to just get updates on as this drought and critical water year unfolds, and just
yeah, when we had our water rights drought discussion, you know, I had mentioned then and brought up to Eileen, and have mentioned still yet, and plan to make sure that we have a real drinking water drought discussion here before us. You know, as we begin to step into you know, some of the needs analysis rollout, and then, you know, kind of get through that. I think that'll soon provide us, and as the CDAG report, as Darren said, gets out, I think then that'll provide a moment for us to kind of say, okay, where are we, and how do we communicate the good work that has gone on, and maybe start flagging the work that we need to be doing in the next 6 to 9 months. So
great.
thank you, board member. Though, yeah, good discussion, and thank you for your questions and follow up. And thank you again, Mr. Oriana. Appreciate it. Any further questions, either for the commenter or otherwise commenting questions from board members here?
I have a few comments. Are you finished with public comment?
I think we are. I think we are now.
All right. So I don't feel terribly organized here because, you know, all the different sections of the report. So I'll do the best I can and start off with following up on some of the drought discussions. And so I really appreciate what the report has in here on drought. But one of the things that I felt became really clear to me in a stakeholder discussion that board member Firestone and I had about a week and a half ago was where we could really improve on communication and coordination with municipalities, in particular the counties. And so to the extent that any of that could be called out here in the report, I think that it'd be helpful. There's no one size fits all, but certainly we can do better maybe on guidance in terms of preparedness, and then be able to hopefully move those discussions through a little more smoothly coming up in future drought cycles. And then speaking of counties, I appreciate the discussion on new systems and bringing in areas where there could be improvement, in particular new systems and consolidations. But one of the areas that I felt could use some additional discussion is on new wells, permits for new wells. And this is an area that I've mentioned many times before, that I really think that counties should require testing where there's an application for a new well, a new homeowner going into the county. And so some way to incorporate that discussion here, you know, attempting to address those issues, you know, before they even come up. And there's some good, I appreciate Chair Esquivel talking about messaging, but I think even in this report, there are a few charts that we could do better on, but just really the illustration, I think it's around page 174, there's a chart on wells, and there's just, you know, in certain areas, there's just really high content or violations of arsenic in particular. And so I just think that community members deserve to know that before going down that path. And so any way to incorporate that into this discussion, I think would be helpful. Looking at my notes here. Oh, on technologies. I thought it was a good discussion in section 8 on technologies. And maybe this is something that's already obvious to private equity markets and others that are interested in engaging in this space, but anything that could be done to incorporate a discussion here that could help point potential investors in the right direction as to what our needs are. The basics are clearly in here, but sort of the cutting edge technology piece, I don't know if it would be in this document or through, some other communication, but just wanted to highlight that. And I think that's it. Yeah, thank you. This is a really good report and appreciate the discussion today.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Really great comments and thorough and succinct. So thank you. Appreciate that. Other board members?
Very good discussion today, and I think good input all around. I don't really have too much to add at the moment. There's clearly a lot to process here in terms of all the recommendations, and so on that, one bit of a suggestion I guess I'll provide, just in terms of as we're looking through this report and ways to better clarify the messaging and the presentation of the information. I completely concur with those suggestions. And when we're getting into the recommendations piece, I think there's something like 60 plus different individual recommendations. And just in my high level review so far, it's a little difficult to tease out which ones are kind of in progress, which ones are already clearly statutorily enabled, for the board to proceed with, which ones might need an action of the legislature, and then the relative priority of these different recommendations. So I don't know, exactly how best to present that or to catch that notion, but I do think there's benefit either for all these different audiences in understanding where these different ideas and actions might fall in the pecking order, because there is so much to do. And so, I find myself wondering that here, where our efforts, our limited resources best focus, and just a little bit challenging to kind of figure that out based on my quick read so far. But I've opened an additional discussion on that and thinking through different ways we can approach that.
Yeah, thank you, board member. Good comments. And to my mind, maybe really an executive summary is kind of helpful and needed here. To your point, to bring up kind of like the top level sort of points, and throughout the document, maybe just an better eye to treatment around the recommendations, and somehow better maybe summing them up if possible. I know there's a lot here and a lot of work, so we'll see. And again, this is a document that we'll be coming back to, so this can also, some of this be for another document perhaps. But I think to your point, there are some ways that maybe that just around the actions and recommendations, just a little more clarity and structure for them. And again, I think an executive summary would be able to kind of hit some of those points as well. Mr. Polhamus, any thoughts?
Yeah, thank you. So I did, go through those, and basically I tried to follow the lead kind of set by the state water plan in that regard, where we don't particularly call out particular ones. I believe it's a good comment. I'm sure everybody that reads it does. I know, and as you mentioned, it gets a little tricky with so many people reading it. Everybody's going to have different priorities, but we can explore that with the board if they'd like to try to highlight some of them. And just to keep in mind as well, a lot of the recommendations are not for us. They're for others to do as well. They're recommendations that we hope others take up, other agencies, local, state level as well. So it gets a little complicated in that regard, but we're happy to work to try to figure some schema out there that pleases the board.
And that's actually something I've seen other reports do is maybe as a attachment or another way of showing the recommendations is breaking it out on who would be the lead for implementing that recommendation, because they are each for different folks, and a lot of times they're multi-agency, but just having a little more clarity on who the recommendations, who they're aimed at, maybe sounds a little aggressive, but who would need to be the lead on those in terms of partnering with us to make them happen.
I know from my years of participation with the state water plan one, we attempted that one time. But of course, you have to get the other agencies' agreement to be mentioned. Assigning them work from our standpoint is a bit tricky. It's very attractive, but it didn't work so well in the state water plan. But that is an undoable thing. I know in the state water plan, they did kind of just deal with state agencies, of course.
I was going to say that. Yeah, exactly. I think that's more complicated for, within the state agencies. But I do think some of these are clearly, legislative recommendations. Some of them are really for local agencies. So even if we don't, call out the name of a particular agency, but just giving a sense of, where that kind of the level of, if it's a local agency, if it's legislative, if it's state agency. And then also just the ones, the ones really we are and can implement on our own, because I think there are some there too, which is always great to show that we're thinking about how we're recommending new ways of approaching or evolving ways of approaching things ourselves.
Yeah, my mind kind of goes to the water resiliency portfolio a bit, and some of the tables around the actions that were generated kind of as appendices to help people kind of break out by responsibility. Yeah, we'll see. I think, thank you, Darren, for being open and for folks to be open to these thoughts from us. Again, it's an incredible document, and trying to make sure that it gets its due life and attention, and that this really does help fuel our work in a meaningful way. So just thank you, everyone.
And sorry, just adding on a couple things. Just on that, I think I would love to see, in terms of how we're thinking about making this digestible, and I think, Chair Esquivel, you said this, but thinking about audiences, and can we break up kind of, there's the executive summary, but even an executive summary would be so big because there's so much here. So kind of breaking things up around kind of thematic areas. I know Vice Chair, I couldn't agree more with you on the kind of new permits, new development, new private wells, and how we can make sure that audience, like counties in particular, that audience is getting the resources and tools and sort of perspective that we have in here, and in other tools like the at-risk maps, the kind of way we're implementing 1263 in terms of reviewing new permits. So I think that's an example of, like, could we have a pull-out summary that's more that's succinct and smaller for that audience, as an example. I think there's a ton more like that. I just wanted to say, as my comments overall on this, is just, I am so impressed and grateful and proud to be part of this team that has put this together, that is, I think really leading the country and, doing justice to the commitment of the human right to water in developing a very, transparent and proactive look at the challenges we face in our state, how we're working to address them, ways we need to continue to improve, and how we can understand the challenge so that we can all be crafting solutions. We're not going to solve this as the State Water Board on our own. This is something that really is something we all have to be a part of in the state and federal partnership, for that matter, as well. I just couldn't be more grateful to the staff that not only put this document together as a first draft, and I think, we'll continue to pull out the great stuff from this, but also the staff that's doing this work day in and day out, and the SAFER program, and then all the stakeholders that are participating in the success of that. I just couldn't be more proud to be part of this team, and I really appreciate the work.
Hear, hear. Thank you, board member. Board member Dodek, did you want to say anything? I want to make sure I provide you a chance.
Can't beat that. So board member Firestone said it best and said it completely. Hear, hear.
Great, hear, hear. Thank you, everyone. This has been a very productive discussion. Glad this is, again, we're looking at final adoption of this plan here in August or so is the timeline. So there's time to continue to provide feedback for those that haven't had a chance either today or otherwise. And particularly to board member Firestone's point, this isn't just a safe drinking water plan for the Division of Drinking Water or the State Water Board. This is meant to best capture as we can what is a statewide effort, and want to call out the good work that we do with the Department of Water Resources, with so many of our other sister agencies, but also the water districts and agencies themselves, and look forward to their thoughtful reflection on what's proposed here, how this document can help them, and the counties as well, to the board member's point. I think, again, we're looking forward to continuing to ensure that everyone's feedback is appropriately reflected in here, because this is a state plan. This isn't just ours. So thank you, everyone that engaged and provided comment today, and looking forward to that further discussion. If there are any other further thoughts, just again, appreciate everyone's good time today. I think this item can be concluded, and then otherwise our board meeting is now brought to an end. And so that means we'll see you all here in what I think is nearly 4 weeks, because we will have our next board meeting here on April 6th. And to flag again that the Salton Sea workshop has been rescheduled. That was supposed to take place this afternoon for the evening or afternoon and then evening, similar schedule, 2 o'clock start time, as I understand, for Wednesday the 7th. So thank you, everyone, for a very productive 2 days. Look forward to all the great work that I know will go on between now and the 2 weeks when we see you next. But until then, stay safe and stay healthy, everyone. See you all soon. Thank you. This meeting is adjourned. Take care.